Hello, everybody. Welcome back to It's Life with Juan Lee and Oliver Marcelle. We are here today, and it's Oliver. Let's put it like it. How you doing? What's going on? How you feeling today?
Listen, I'm good, man. I'm coming off of, to be honest, I'm coming off of a little bout with the flu, and some different things that have happened, which is actually perfect for what's about to take place in this conversation, because coming off some curveballs, kind of dodging some I won't call them bullets, but dodging some asteroids or something, but that's life. It's
That
life.
it's life, and for that, on that note, we're going to call this episode the catch up
I
because
love
we've been apart for a while,
it.
and it's been for a multitude of reasons.
Yep.
But the fact of the matter is that it's life, and we've got to realize and recognize that we're going to have to adjust and
Absolutely.
make some adjustments. But the key thing to that, I believe, though, Oliver, is that we have an idea of where we're trying to get to. Because these adjustments are only as we have a vision for where we want to be.
Yeah.
Because adjustments are coming without the perspective being able to give us that north star, so to speak,
Mhm.
so that we can keep our eye on the north star in spite of the adjustments that we have to know. Because when the challenges of life come, we need to be able to have our eye focused on the north star so that we can keep on going in the right direction, because those challenges will in many cases knock us off course.
Yeah, that's very true. And kind of spoiler alert, right? If you were to jump to the end of this, maybe the beauty of what you just described, right? Keeping your eye on the North Star and still knowing that as you have that focus, there are some things that you may have to make adjustments around. The important thing is being flexible enough. First of all, having the understanding that adjustments are part of the process. Because some of us, we get in, we have our eye on the North Star, and we also have a very distinct vision of the path between where we are right now and getting to that North Star. And some of us make the mistake of being so adamant about that path that we don't even want to accept the fact that there may be a detour. Right now, when I go to visit my parents, there's a certain way that I always go, and there's a street that allows me to cut through from one major street into their neighborhood. That street is now blocked off because they're doing some work. So muscle memory, sometimes I'll pull up to the street and put the blinker on like I'm going to turn, because in my mind it's kind of tunnel vision. And I think sometimes we approach the navigation of life that way. And so when we get to that place and we see that the plate it's cut off, now we're stuck because we haven't accepted the fact that, okay, wait a minute, along this path to the North Star, I might have to adjust. A curveball might get thrown in my path. There may be an accident that I got to navigate around. There may be a detour that I have to navigate around. In my case right now, it's elderly parents and being a care, like really being a caregiver, because for a while they were very self-sufficient. My dad stopped driving at like 87, 86, something like that, right? So they were doing their own thing for a while, but then when they weren't. You know what I mean? It was like there was no transition period. It was one day they were doing everything, the next day I was doing everything, right? So that's a detour of sorts, and understanding that there's some adjustments that need to be made, I think, is crucial. So for those that are listening, I'm going to use a phrase my wife says often: have a checklist, but hold that checklist loosely. Don't find yourself in a place where now you're stuck, you're not moving forward, you're not making any progress because you're so adamant about the path being a certain way that you're not even looking around to see what the adjustments are that can help you continue forward.
That is great advice. I think that the sooner you can get that understanding. And it's so interesting that you said, have a checklist, but don't hold it so tight. I'm gonna go from the level of the point of this conversation. You brought in a very interesting thing because you're dealing with an elderly parent. That in and of itself has to be a part of your North Star for you to get to this point to be able to say that.
Mm, that's good perspective. Yeah.
And I think so many times we are surprised that this particular situation occurs
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes a diversion or a distraction or an obstacle, not understanding the need for it to be planned for or prepared for from our perspective. Because I'm gonna kick you something to you. You and I, we've talked about this before. I've been a caregiver for the past 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that my wife and I prepared for, knowing that that was something that was probably going to happen,
Yeah.
if not definitely going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And in our case, we had a little bit of a heads up in the sense because my wife has Alzheimer's. My wife's mother has Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and her grandmother had Alzheimer's. And so that was something that we realized could possibly happen.
Mm-hmm.
It became a reality, and we began to do things to determine how we were going to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was about not if there was going to be a part of the journey, but now how are we going to make this journey um, as palatable as possible in the price in this day and age as it relates to what we were having to how we were going to engage this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was to the point where we made some decisions to make things as, and I don't like to say comfortable, but as easy as it could for us because we knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you, the challenge for most caregivers is the fact that it will literally um it just tears you up, and it's just it takes so much time to do it.
Right. Right.
And the one thing that we realized is that we couldn't do we was running us crazy because
Mm-hmm.
we were doing it with my dad after my mom died. It was driving us crazy. And it
Mm-hmm.
was like, what do we have to do? We thought about, do we move in with him? Because we were relatively close, but it was still, we worked, both my wife and I worked, and then we had to go here and do that, be a part. It was driving us crazy. It was really, and so at that point we began to make decisions that we would buy a house that would accommodate both my dad and my mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did. We started to put that plan in place so that we could accommodate them without driving ourselves crazy,
Yeah.
without killing us trying to do it. Because at the time when it occurred, it was amazing though, because we lived in the house we live in right now. We lived in it 30 days. We've been here almost 12 years, and
Mm-hmm.
we've only lived in this house for less than 30 days by ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as we moved in 30 days after, and this was a house that we had built.
Mm-hmm.
So this was planned. It was being built, and 30 days after my dad needed to come live with us.
Wow.
And then my dad passed away, and about 8 months later, my mother-in-law moved in with us.
Mm-hmm.
So I take that back. We had 9 months of living by ourselves in this house. But my point was is that it was a seamless transition.
Mm-hmm.
we prepared to make those, and then things just flowed very easily. Now, don't tell me wrong. It's still a challenge, but I'm gonna tell you the challenge would have been 20 times worse.
Yeah.
Us running back and forth, trying to decide. And what we did is, and even in what we did, we could have done things a little bit better, but we made it as well as much as we knew to do
Mm-hmm.
to make a place accommodating for everybody who was going to be here.
Yeah.
And so we made those decisions in advance. So when I say that North Star, that caring for your parents and knowing that if they're going to get older, they're going to know they're going to need some help.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is, we talk about the boomerang effect, but now we're becoming parents to our parents.
Right. Right.
And so that means that this thing is going to change and adjust. So it's not only as we are thriving and driving to be all that we can do, we've got to now take some other things into consideration as we begin to navigate this experience. Because guess what? It's about more than just ourselves and our immediate family. I mean, even now, it's how builders are talking about building houses called multi-generational houses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas is that they know that it's a necessity that they're going to be needing spaces to accommodate multi-generations.
Right.
And I think we need to heed this and understand that if we want to be able to show the compassion and the care that we want to for our parents as they did us,
Mm-hmm.
then we're going to have to start making some adjustments and accommodations so that that can occur and not waiting for it to happen. And then all of a sudden go, now, what do we do? How do we do this?
That's good, man. You dropped a major key, and that is preparation.
The big word. That's life.
Major key, because, and that's something that many of us, we don't incorporate into the navigation of life. Many of us are literally flying by the seat of our pants. And we're taking things as they come. And then, God forbid, something comes that either I don't want to handle or don't feel like I can handle, then I'm stuck. Right. And so it's a major key. Part of this navigation, a component of navigating life successfully, is wrapped in preparation.
It's essential to being able to do it successfully, because preparation allows you, as you go through, it gives you options.
Yeah.
See, a lot of us don't have the options when situations are thrown at us, but preparation gives us options. And that's what, I mean, if we were to sum this thing all up, is the more options you have, the more opportunities you have. That gives you the ability to spread this stuff out and determine which is beneficial or which one is best for this particular situation. But when you ain't got but one option,
yeah,
and then you allow other people to dictate that option,
right?
Now it ain't like it's your choice. It's either you're gonna be the bad one and the bad person if you don't take their option.
Mm-hmm.
No, that ain't what. Again, that ain't what love says. You know, the opportunity, it says, okay, to use the right attitude, use preparation to understand that this experience called life is not a unique situation. This thing is repeating itself over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? We got a little bit of a different nuances now. People living longer. We've got to understand we're going to have to make some adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
And not only to parenting children, we're going to have to. And so this is the preparation that we have to be able to see and understanding this. And, who would have thought that there would have been a thing called the boomerang effect? Children go out and then they come back home. Mm-hmm. And now children, guess what? Now parents are coming back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we really, really need to understand life is the same, but yet a little bit of a change to the processes here so that we understand, look, how do we get the same results? And the same results goes really back to the nucleus of the family. It really comes back to, we've gotten to the point, I know in my generation, I was like, I couldn't wait to get away from home. I was like, I can't wait to get away from home. And then, we realized that My mom and dad, they did the best they could.
Mhm.
And irrespective of whether or not it was sufficient or necessary or what I felt was necessary, doesn't change the fact that they're my parents.
Exactly.
And now I'm in a position to maybe do for them what they were unable to do for me, but that's my role now.
Right.
That's my role.
Yep.
And so they gave me the opportunity to be to them what I can now be to them. And that should be what I refer to as fulfillment,
Yeah.
because it's what I have to give that brings me fulfillment, not necessarily what somebody gave me.
That's good. Because essentially you're being, because we've talked about being a participant, right? Essentially what you're talking about is being an active participant as opposed to feeling coerced or just following, being pushed by the tide. Because you can get caught up in just being pushed by the tide of life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It happens to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
um but you have the ability, based on what you're saying, you have the ability to script your level of participation based on your level of self-awareness and based on what you do with that self-awareness and self-actualization in the way of preparation.
You hit it on the head. I mean, that right there is the key to this experience called life. This thing is, how do you prepare yourself? There's a big part of the attitudes of love is first being able to to love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that process of loving yourself is to know self, accept self, and to develop self so that you can give self.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if you're able to do that, that means that you're confident in who you are, and so navigation now becomes clearer as to what you offer this experience called life, because you know yourself. So many of us never get to this clarity,
Yeah.
so that they can navigate this experience, because it's not changing. Maybe some nuances, but the fact of the matter is it's not changing. And because it's not changing, we've got to be able to navigate it, because things are going to happen to us. Things are going to look. Your day, you woke up thinking one thing. I woke up one day the same, thinking something totally different. But
Mm-hmm.
yet we've got to be able to navigate those things that we did not expect to happen. And it's only based on how we're going to be able to perceive it when it does happen is going to determine how we navigate it. And that
So,
only comes from the preparation that we carry into it.
so let me ask you this, and I'm playing the role of the listener at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are the individual who will push back and say, well, we can't predict what's happening, so how can we prepare, right? So what does preparation look like? Because you can prepare. Let's just be clear about that for those
Yeah.
who may think you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that mean you're going to have a system in place for every nuance that life throws you? No, that's not what that means. However, the other side of that coin is also detrimental, which is to not have any kind of plan. So what is preparation? We've been talking a lot about preparation and the fact that that makes you an active participant. What does that look like for the person who's like, man, all right, I hear you, but I don't know what the next step is?
Preparation is knowing, first of all, that you're in an experience that is already determined. Okay, it's already determined. There's things are going to come your way that you're not prepared for. How you view them is going to be everything. How your perspective as it relates to how you do it. We're going to prepare because we have to. I mean, use myself as an example. I graduated from high school and I felt hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
I felt unprepared for life,
Mm-hmm.
for life. And what I did is I went into the military, and it gave me confidence because it showed me who I was, not based on anyone else. This is the key element in preparation. It's the first thing you need to do is stop comparing yourself to anybody else. Stop comparing yourself to anybody else. You are an original, you are unique, and it's up to you to be able to find your uniqueness and your originality. Once you do that, now here's, I know that's not that sounds, okay when you say it, but here's the point. Inside of each and every one of us, there is this innate ability or thought to want to serve somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
It's in us. We want to serve. Now, it can be driven by a multitude of things, and it could be driven by money. Because the only way you're going to exchange money is for a service.
Mm-hmm.
You're either going to produce or in service or product or something. You're going to give something to someone else to get you some money. What is it that you have, that I have, that we can render to someone else that would bring you whatever it is you're desiring? If it's money or if it's fulfillment, it comes from that ability to have something to give. Okay? We've got to determine and find out what that is. For me, it's what we're doing right now. Just sharing my experiences brings me fulfillment. It really brings me fulfillment. Now, does that mean that I didn't chase after money? Yeah, sure I did, because there was things that I had to do, and there was a time. But here's the process of preparing to get to this point. I had to prepare to get to this point. I just didn't wake up in the morning and say, I'm gonna start a podcast and I'm gonna start a nonprofit. No, It took years and years of preparation to get to this point. And here's the biggest point. It took sacrifice.
Okay.
It took sacrifice. Okay. Because when everybody else was spending, doing things like that, my wife and I were saving. My wife and I were saving. I tell my wife all the time, I said, both of us are really modest people in the sense of we don't spend a lot. But the same thing is that at any given time, it doesn't take much for you to get thrown into a whirlwind and spend, because situations will try to dictate you. And that's one of the bigger issues that we have to deal with. And just to throw a little bug in there, I'm going to be starting a new podcast called Life and Money, where we talk about how money influences our life.
Okay.
It directs us based on our understanding of it. And so as a result, we get pulled away off of our goals and objectives because we spend our money in things that are not contributing to our goals. Goals are essential in being able to navigate life financially. But that being said, that's the point I'm saying is that we had to sacrifice. It's not this instant gratification in the journey. If it's a long journey, the journey is not a sprint. It's a distance race. And so we've got to prepare. And so stopping, not comparing yourself with others, allow you now to be authentic so that you can get those opportunities when they occur, because of the options that you've allowed yourself to have, to be able to look at the situations through various types of perspectives so that you can navigate.
Yeah. That's good.
So here's the point. No matter where you are, sacrifice is always going to be a component. It's always going to be a component. You can never attain anything without something that you've got to invest. Sacrifice is an investment.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice, man, because I feel like, and I'm not going to be one of those guys who, just stomps on, younger generations, but I feel like there's an air with some younger generations that alludes to sacrifice not being a component, or we don't want to have to give up too much stuff, if anything at all. But I would like the same result from life without having to do that. And what I hear you saying is that that's impossible.
Try to go to a garden and try to pick something that wasn't first grown. You got to put the seed in the ground before you can get the apple off the tree.
Mm-hmm.
You got to sow before you can reap.
Mm-hmm.
This is just natural stuff here.
Right.
You've got to invest something to get something out of something. A lot of people look at life and they're like, it owes you something. No, it doesn't. It's going to be here with you or without you. If what are you going to invest into it is going to be based on what the return is going to be back to your account.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Like that's, and you would think that that is, I don't know, common sense, right? But there is a segment of people who really are looking for a way to navigate life and be a participant that is catered to, as opposed to being a participant that is a catalyst for, which is really what we, as we navigate this thing, right? You're talking about preparation, right? Preparation, if you're working on being prepared, you are operating under a certain mindset. If you are walking through life and you're coming to the realization and living out the realization that it's not about just you, that preparation involves you actually thinking about those that are around you, those that are special to you, and those outside of that circle, because it's a ripple effect, right? That now speaks to a totally different kind of mindset than the person who's navigating life looking around for all the perks. And part of, and those folk have a rude awakening later on in life, because then when they run into the detour and there's nobody standing at the detour, with any perks, and now they're faced with, oh man, I actually got to dig in and do something. Now they're behind the eight ball because they, up until this point, have not practiced that level of discipline, that level of self-control, that level of humility. They have not operated in the kind of love that you're talking about. And so now you're behind the eight ball, because now you're faced with situations that require you to have those emotions, skills, attributes, attitudes, and now you're playing catch up trying to get them.
You're absolutely right. And in many cases in life, when we get confronted with those types of detours or obstacles, it either ends up in one of two places, either dead or in the jail.
Mm.
Because we then do not know how to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's for instance, there is no, I'm gonna be careful about saying this, there is no absolute navigation
Mm-hmm.
that is going to be successful against humanity. There is no navigational process against humanity.
Okay.
Laws humanity supersedes the laws of man.
Okay.
And so when man begins to enforce its laws, it can be somewhat skewed, and um it can be some kind of partiality rendered
Hmm.
when man's law is administered. But humanity is over that. And so there is no way to see, if we hold ourselves to humanity, it will supersede the laws of man. And we have to realize that man will be subject to, he's sporadic, he's wishy-washy, he can change and he can maneuver to benefit self. But humanity is to that degree where it's selfless.
Okay.
It's selfless. And so when you navigate at that level, you can navigate irregardless as to what the tricks of humans might want to do, or man might try to occur and accomplish with you. But you're at a level that you can navigate that, because you know that your system of navigating humanity is greater than man's law.
Keeps you constant. Yeah.
It allows you to overshoot whatever. So, and what that means is that humanity or man is going to look at you kind of funny, because they're not going to be able to reach you, but you can see them.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they trying their little tricks of the trade, you can begin to just overshoot what they're doing, because your standards is higher than their standards.
Yeah.
It's higher than their standards. That's where love allows you to have the attitudes of love, to be able to know how to maneuver those situations that are can be changed to benefit some person or some things as an individual, and not as a collective, as humanity. I know that might have went too far than where we were headed or how we were getting there.
Well, no, because I mean that ties in though, because part of that preparation is you understanding the need for consistency in the way you navigate life, and that the way you navigate life cannot be dictated by the various nuances that come about and curveballs that are thrown. Because if you do that, you're not an active participant. You're actually being, what we talked about earlier, you're actually being pushed by the waves of life, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So with all of the things that are happening now in life for me, I'm learning how to navigate time. I'm learning how to manage time. I'm learning how uh to move in such a way, excuse me, that incorporates all of these new components,
mm-hmm,
right? Now there's two ways I could go about that. I could just let the whole thing wash over me. And you talked about in the beginning, just kind of being like, feeling like you're just running ragged, right? I actually went through that in the beginning. Because I was just, it was new. And I'm like, okay, this thing has to be canceled, or I can't go to this meeting, or what am I going to do about, and so you have that moment. And then if you're being an active participant, what it should do now is cause you to sit down and create what is your level of consistency. What is that constant you just talked about that puts you above the idiosyncrasies and the sometimes very sporadic nuances of what man will do? If you are preparing and you understand what the sacrifices are, and you're putting contingencies in, which is again preparation, now you're floating above that. So I get it. And that's a huge lesson for those that are listening. That's something you want to really be intentional about looking at, because what it will help you to do is you won't get as flustered. I'm not saying you will never get flustered, but you won't get as flustered. You won't get as thrown off course if you happen to chart your course and then, an hour into your course, you realize, man, I can't even go this way. Like the whole road is shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And one of the things that's very consistent with what you're saying, and just to reiterate, and it was basically until you set. So you and I were talking before we started, and was talking about you on this course of being able to set your routine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's only because you have an idea of what that thing was going to look like that you were able to now adjust it.
Mm.
If you've never had a routine,
right,
and then something is thrown at you, you realize at that moment how much you were probably ill prepared for what you were doing at the time of being able to set your own norm.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have there's no place for any types of nuances. And life is nothing full of them, full of different changes and challenges. So it's because of that you have to be able to go, okay, what I'm looking for. And the way that I look at this is, if it's anything in my life that I cannot maintain, I get rid of it.
Mm.
If I can't maintain it at the level in which it's intended to be maintained,
mm-hmm.
it's too much.
Mm.
It's too much.
That's good. Write that down for those of you who are listening. That's a good one.
It's too much. And that's essential, because it's a red flag. It's a red flag, because it tells me that if something else came unexpected, something was going to have to fall off.
Mm. That's good.
I have to leave myself some way of being able to. It's almost like how I use it, and this is something that I'm be sharing with the Life and Money crew, and that is that emergency funds is those things that you can't prepare for.
Mm-hmm.
That's called life.
Right.
If you don't make contingencies in your budgeting, in your life, for things to happen that you didn't plan for, they're going to wipe you out. You don't have to know what it is, but know that it's coming.
Right.
The water heater is going to go out. The heat and air conditioning is going to stop. Mm. Unfortunately, when is it going to happen? You don't have a control over that. But when it does, you got to be prepared.
Got to be prepared. That's good, man. That's good. Like that's a key. That's a major key to navigating this thing called life successfully, and understanding and recognizing where you fall on the spectrum as it relates to whether you are an active participant or whether you are just a floating device.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, this has been a good time, Oliver. We're gonna call it a day for us today.
That's a good place to stop. Like, that's good advice.
It was called catch up, but it was ending up being preparation.
Yeah. Listen, preparation will keep you maybe from having to do as much catch up. Now you're gonna have to do some catch up in life, because you're gonna get thrown some stuff that you were prepared for but couldn't predict.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So maybe as we close this out, maybe some of this is really in the way we approach this verbally and mindset wise.
Mm-hmm.
Often we'll say, man, this thing came up that I wasn't prepared for. Now, is it that you weren't prepared for it, or is it that you merely couldn't predict it? Because if you weren't prepared for it, there's a lot of that's going to come with that level of ill preparedness.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were prepared, you're conscious of the fact that these things are part of the navigation of life. So let me, like you said, talking about the money piece, let me have something aside for those things that I can't predict. That's a very different level of navigation in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we want to always put it into the column of being able to predict versus prepare.
Right.
There's a totally different thing. And that's where, we're going to get into some heavy stuff because, one of the bigger ones that is out there is death. You can't predict.
Right.
But you can prepare.
You can prepare.
Okay. And I think we avoid that conversation.
Yeah, we do.
And it's a conversation that we need to have because it's essential in being able to navigate this thing called life.
That's it. That's a great place to land the plane.
Hey, Oliver, tell them where they can reach you and catch up with you.
Listen, you can email me at Oliver, Oliver, at denali.org, denolior.org. You can follow me on all social media, same thing, Denali, LLC, DENOLI, LLC. And connect with me, man. I'd love to connect with you, author, speaker, and coach in the marriage enrichment and men's or relationship building, I guess you could say, and men's empowerment spaces. And I'm here for you. So connect with me.
Gotcha. And I'm Juan Lee. I am a author, speaker, and a thought leader in the power of love. And I'm also, you can reach me at juan@clearjourney.org or on any social media. You might find me at Juan Lee, the author, on YouTube. And also you can find me on Facebook, and Twitter is Love Made Simple. You can go to Amazon and go to Audible and sign up for Audible and get a free copy of it. And we look forward to seeing you next time here at It's Life.